Day 839 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at the Russian losses as Russia sits on more than 521,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 980 in the past day. Then as for hardware losses, 9 tanks, 11 APVs, 46 artillery, and 2 air defense systems. And I'm happy to show you both of those in just a moment. But first of all, we'll head to the map and start out in Crimea as once again, overnight, powerful blasts were heard near Belbek and Sevastopol, with it being reported that 2 radars of the S-300 and 1 of the S-400 systems were destroyed. The detonation of munitions was recorded in all 3 areas where the anti-aircraft missile systems were stationed, with hits on the target areas being confirmed. And all of this comes just after an attack on the same types of systems further north in Crimea from just 2 days earlier. Now, the current image you see on the screen is satellite imagery from the previous event on the 10th, where Russian air defenses took a beating from Yevpatoria and Jankoy, just to name a couple of locations with that series of events. And there was even some recent photos from partisans in the region showing new Russian air defense systems traveling to these locations, presumably to replace the destroyed ones. And I cannot stress enough how finite these Russian air defense systems truly are. When they're gone, they're gone. There is no production capacity even close to replacing these systems at the rate in which they're lost. And yet, as we see, Russia has little option but to replace them until this game of musical chairs is over. Then briefly moving all the way up on the map to Moscow as Atesh partisans destroyed a satellite communication station. The sabotage was carried out on the territory of the 584th Guards Anti-Air Missile Regiment in the city of Klin. Then headed into Ukraine as the AFU continues to eradicate the scourge that is the invading force within Vovchansk, with efforts to fully liberate the city currently underway. Now, Ukraine may in fact hold 70% of the town, as per advice from Ukraine's general staff, although at first glance it might look more like 50-50, but Vovchansk encompasses these areas, so just to the top of the hills, all the way out, probably even further, and something a little bit like that. All while Ukraine is performing some significant counterattacks at the moment with artillery and drones. Then headed right next door on the Western Front, as it turns out Ukraine managed to push back Russians directly north of Lipsy as well. But that one does await further confirmations and map updates. Then headed a bit further down the map where Kharkiv borders Luhansk, where, for instance, we take a look at the front lines and Russia has clearly been working on an encirclement between the settlements of Berestova and Novoselivska. Although the precarious looking situation has looked this way for at least a few weeks now. And what we've seen from Russian forces' tactics in the recent past is such that they are capable of flanking and encircling locations, but with the limitation of doing well only at short distances of, say, 1 to 2 kilometers. Whereas this location here, if I was to put the ruler on it, and down the bottom, about 4.5 k's. Thus, with every additional kilometer or mile required for an encirclement, it's been seen that it just gets exponentially longer for Russia to achieve the capture of the land, if successful, and it's always done with a heavily attritional mindset. But it's certainly not an unexpected location for Russia to attempt such feats, as they would ideally like to gain full control over the main highway leading north and south. Then, at an undisclosed location in the Luhansk region, this Pantsir S-1 air defense system has been eliminated by a HIMARS strike. So that's the first of 2 air defense systems destroyed. Then moving a little further down on the map, as Ukrainian troops have so far continued to deny Russian claims to the town of Chasiv Yar, all while there has been increased reports of heavy activity from the Russian side. And in the last 24 hours alone, Ukraine's military says its forces repelled 7 attempted Russian breakthroughs in the area. It's clearly a priority for Moscow, this location. Then to a brief mention on Russian jets falling out the sky, with recent news about Ukrainian air defenses shooting down a Russian Su-25 Frogfoot ground attack aircraft in the Avdiivka sector just over a day ago. But then also, and you've likely heard already, there was the case of the Russian Su-34 jet that crashed to the ground in the North Ossetia region inside Russia itself. Just trying to find that one there. There it is, just hiding at this location. The crash happened near a mountainous area where locals reported hearing an explosion. And given that such event, it was difficult to deny, with the Russian MOD and a Russian Air Force adjacent Telegram channel confirming the incident, stating that it happened during a routine training flight due to a technical malfunction with the aircraft. And so this loss adds to a mounting toll for Russia, with at least 45 other Su-34 jets reportedly being lost so far during Russia's ongoing invasion of Ukraine. In fact, Russia has tried to get around Western sanctions over the Ukraine war by acquiring nearly $500 million worth of aircraft components from abroad. But this latest incident shows the strain on Russia's aging aircraft fleet. So as the numbers add up, crashes like these ones lay bare the heavy price Russia is paying to keep its air force operating. Particularly as this jet is used a lot for the launch of the guided munition drops on frontline positions in the war in Ukraine. Then looking around the map okay, so here we go. For the first one, somewhere in the east, there was the arrival of a Ukrainian shell into a Russian truck, resulting in what could only be described as pre-cooked meals from the tin. But maybe a bit overdone perhaps. Then also, we saw a Ukrainian FPV munition reportedly with an improved warhead that flies into a Russian turtle tank, penetrating its turtle armor and causing an ammunition cook-off. Then we saw an original hardware entry making a comeback, with the American-provided Switchblade kamikaze drone destroying a Russian Buk M2 air defense system. There we go, that's 2 for 2. Then we saw the more unique case of a Russian Borisov-Glebsk-2 multifunction EW system, so electronic warfare system, that was destroyed by a Ukrainian FPV drone. And this system was relentlessly attacked by multiple FPV drones until it succumbed to that fiery demise. Now, these platforms work off an MTLB base, but are much more expensive, costing several $1 million per unit. Then we head across to the map to part of the most western front, as at occupied Aleshki, a woman went to the part of the Antonivsky Bridge so that she could be evacuated to Kherson. The woman stepped onto a part of the bridge, waved a Ukrainian passport at the drone, and then AFU soldiers evacuated her to Kherson by watercraft. Hard to believe we are watching this in 2024. The only difference from World War II is that it's filmed in color and from a quadcopter. But to leave the occupied South just like that, I'm guessing this individual wasn't part of the 95% of the residents that voted in the Kherson referendum to become annexed into Russia. And a bit of sarcasm there, because that whole situation was an incredibly illegal and illegitimate set of referendums. Then headed across to some news for today. So the United States will send another Patriot missile defense system to Ukraine. And this will be the second Patriot system provided by the US to help Ukraine defend against Russian missiles and air attacks. The decision comes as Ukraine urgently requests more air defense systems amid a fierce Russian assault on the Kharkiv region. The new Patriot system will also be sourced by, or from, I should say, Poland, where it was protecting US troops who are now returning home. Officials also say it could be deployed to Ukraine's front lines within days. And of course, it really doesn't have far to travel. Then in some related news, Germany will send Ukraine a third Patriot missile defense system in the coming weeks. Now, it was just last week that Germany provided its fourth IRIS-T air defense system, and so as a bit of a tally here, 4 IRIS-T systems and soon to be 5 Patriot air defense systems in Ukraine. Then in some more hardware news, the German company Rheinmetall has signed an agreement to start producing its new Lynx armored fighting vehicles for Ukraine. Production will begin this year with the Lynx joining the Swedish CV90 and the Polish Rozomak and the US Bradley M2 as Ukraine's most modern infantry fighting vehicles. Rheinmetall will also cooperate with a Ukrainian partner to manufacture the Lynx in Ukraine, helping build up the country's defense industry to reduce future import dependence. And notably, the modular Lynx can be configured with different weapons like a 30mm or a 35mm cannon for air defense or a 120mm tank gun. I kid you not. And thus really blurring the lines between tank and IFV. But to say all of that in another way, the Lynx can be a 30mm infantry fighting vehicle or an air defense system with use of a German Skynex 35mm cannon or a tank with a 120mm cannon. That is just some impressive modularity right there, with the last one sometimes being referred to as a light tank. Then headed to a Russian hardware update, and let's see what the Lynx has to compete with. So, well, this here is a Flintstones-shaped trike motorcycle, a little bit rusty with a cage, far from a standard issue platform. And if it were ever to come in contact with the above-mentioned Lynx vehicles, it will be turned into mincemeat. Then headed across to a little bit of Russian economy news, because Gazprom's gaslight fades as the stock price of Russia's state-owned natural gas company has been in freefall recently, crashing from a previous low of 166 rubles per share down to 117 rubles, which represents an almost historic low for the company, with its all-time lowest share price being 107 rubles. As a major Russian energy exporter, Gazprom has been directly impacted by sanctions targeting the Russian energy sector. And there are also broader concerns about the Russian economy's prospects amid the protracted conflict and Gazprom's ability to maintain operations and revenue at previous levels. As a result, the plummeting share price reflects investors losing confidence in the company's future outlook. Or is it just the oligarchs cashing out their shares? But ultimately, Gazprom was once a symbol of Russian economic strength, but its crashing stock is now seen as a bellwether of the damage being inflicted by sanctions and isolation from Western markets and financing due to the war in Ukraine. Then headed across to a quick funny to round it all off today, guys. So, due to a combination of airspace closures, sanctions on Russian airlines, and a pariah status in much of the world, holidaying abroad for Russians is not what it used to be. Take, for example, this such holidaying Russian entourage. It appears they weren't treated all that well on their latest trip to Turkey. So first of all, they hang up the Russian flag outside their hotel room, as if that was meant to give them some sort of credibility and a feeling of exceptionalism. But instead, as you might imagine, it only made them a target, as poop got smeared on their flag, which is quite reminiscent of an old meme picture I have. Also, their sunbeds were covered in the soot, with the addition of a soiled diaper on top, apparently on their clothes as well. Most perplexing, however, is that years of tacit acceptance of Russian media brainwashing has led them to record this video seemingly now in the dark on the matter, and asking the questions of why is this happening to us? We're Russians. Indeed you are. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to comment and like. I've done a little bit of an update to my Patreon channel, so you can check out the tiers and things if you're interested in supporting me, because it really does go a long way, every little bit. And I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.